Oh, okay. Someone's asking about low-speed pre-ignition. What is it? Is it dangerous? Does our DSG tuning help prevent it? Downshifting to prevent significant load.
I mean, that's a tough one to answer. Low speed preignition shouldn't obviously be occurring unless there's something out of spec or the tune isn't accounting for it. It's basically when you're at a very low RPM, very high load situation, and you basically preigniting
Yeah.
your mixture's firing off before it should, causing knock or detonation in the cylinder, which is obviously not healthy for the motor. Uh, so I mean that's what it
Yeah.
is.
And the reason that happens is most engines operate most efficiently at lower RPM. So usually you see a torque peak, depending on a turbo, but on a factory car with a factory turbo, you could see it as low as 1500 RPM.
Right.
So that generates the highest cylinder pressures at a point where the engine, the rods and pistons don't have as much momentum as they would say at higher RPMs. So that pre-ignition can be pretty damaging and generate a lot of heat because of how slow those combustion cycles are compared to higher up in the RPM. So generally, I would let's take low speed pre-ignition. I would go up a few levels and say that trying to do a lot with your motor at low RPMs is a bad idea. Low speed pre-ignition is one of them. There also, there's many devices in the motor that operate off of engine RPM. For example, the oil pump and the FSI fuel pump
Yep.
are two. I suppose your AC compressor, your
Yeah,
alternator.
anything that's driven from the motor is,
Yeah.
is
So none of those accessories, which are receiving their operating power from the engine's crankshaft, none of those are operating in their range at those lower RPMs. So that means the oil pump is not nearly putting out its the flow it will say at 5,000 RPM or 3,000 RPM. So your oil pressure is likely lower than you would like at the torque peak. And then the fuel pump flow is also lower. So the fuel system simply just has less ability to meet the fuel demand at those lower RPMs. So there's this thing called lugging. Generally, if you want to criticize someone, you could call them a lug. And lugging, saying something is lugging is not a good thing, right? It has a very negative connotation. So generally, do not lug your high performance car. Um, there should be no reason to. You can always
you have lots of gears
shift
for lots of
to a
reasons.
lower gear. There's a reason there's gears, and I would say really operate just about any engine between like 2 to 2,500 RPM and redline. I don't have any issues with redline. Redline's awesome, and I think way too many people are afraid of it.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't
No, I'm
understand.
actually,
They, they,
yeah,
they, they think they drive at a low RPM and it's safer for the motor. You're actually going to have higher cylinder pressures typically,
yeah,
especially in a turbocharged application,
yeah.
at the lower RPM ranges with, as Javad mentioned, a lot less support from your other, pressure driven devices, so the pumps and the oil pumps, the fuel pumps and whatnot.
Yeah. So just because you can go wide open throttle at 1,500 RPM doesn't mean you should.
And then
So,
secondarily, does your DSG tuning help prevent it? No, it's not a function of the DSG tune. I mean,
but I mean, if it's in auto mode,
yeah,
it
DSG in
should.
auto mode will just
It would.
it'll downshift. That's
But no, if you're in manual mode, it's gonna hold it.
it's going
It's
to do
gonna
what
let
you're
you do
asking it
it.
to.
Yeah. So just don't do it.
There's no reason to.
There's a lot of things you shouldn't do. You shouldn't crash into curbs either. So
Yeah.
just it's one of the
Blinkers.
things you have to do when you're controlling
Do
your
use
car.
blinkers.
Yes.